Gear rolling in Epic 7 is a big struggle for a lot of players. It can seem very intimidating, and there's a lot of effort and brain power that goes into creating good gear on your account. So I'm going to do my best to come up with a comprehensive guide and walk you through how I go through rolling gear, and hopefully this helps you get better gear on your account and just put yourself in a better position. So to start off, what will be covered, there will be chapters in the YouTube video, but we'll start with some general tips, then we'll talk about different unit archetypes, what they want. We'll talk about equipment score, and then I'll kind of give you an overview of what you should be rolling, talk about some exceptions, including speed chasing, and then we'll talk about the rolling process as well. So first, some general tips. So where to farm gear. So the main place you're going to get gear is from Hunt. So that's going to include Wyvern and Banshee are the most important ones. Wyvern gives you speed set. Banshee gives you a lot of important bruiser gears and stuff through counter. And then you can also do Rift. If you can two-shot Rift, it's more valuable than Hunt. You get more gear, and you don't get as many Reforge mats, so you have to turn to Hunt for that. But you do get more gear, and the gear tends to be higher quality, plus you get to pick the slots that you want. Now, where do you farm and get charms? So the main place you're going to be getting charms from is going to be Unrecorded History farming. So this is going to be like 27 is the recommended unrecorded history I've talked about. You can also farm Eulogy of a Saint. There are some people that have some videos on how to get a lot of charms from that. And then don't forget your daily and weekly sources. So that's going to include the arena shop. That's going to include the weekly steeple craft, which you can see here, as well as Labyrinth. So that's going to be going to Hoochie and the Goblin at 3-4 every day and checking what they have and buying their charms. Now, free gear is really important. Don't overlook it. Hell Nightmare Raid gives you the penetration necks, which you can buy every about month and a half. And then you also get gear drops from those that are really good. You get Automaton Tower, lets you do that selector box for the neck or ring. World Boss can give you some random epic or rare drops on gear. And then Arena Shop can be a great source of some go-to starter gear for a lot of units. Some of these boxes have some really nice pieces of gear in them. And then don't forget events. So obviously side stories are important. So that's going to be stuff like the Overlord collab, like the summer side story we got with Luthakar and Laith. Those are a great way to get gear. Artana crafting event that comes around every now and then is a really nice way to get a nice piece of gear, as well as the Forge Your Epic Gear events. So the biggest tip and the biggest recommendation I have is to never craft right side gear if you can avoid it. I hardly ever craft right side gear. My main source of right side gear is going to be from a gear conversion, which we'll talk about. But left side gear is going to include swords, helmets, and chests, and this is common terminology you'll hear in the community. And then right side gear is going to include necks, rings, and boots. And so the reason you'd always craft left side is because left side has the same subsets. Sword always has attack, helmets always have HP, and chest always has defense. Whereas right side, you have a complete random array of subs or main stats that can be on this right side gear. So that's why crafting right side is just horribly inefficient. Now, when you need right side gear, because you do, you will use gear conversion for that gear. And the only time you would need to craft right side gear, like with your hunt mats, would be if you want cubes to use in gear conversion. So in gear conversion in the Alchemist Steeple, this is where you're going to get your good right side gear, and this is also why it's important to go through your daily routine and make sure you're getting as many blue boxes as you can every week, because that's where you get this. Another big tip is that plus 12 and plus 15 in gear is extremely expensive. It's only the best of the best gets plus 12 and plus 15, right? It takes a lot of charms, a lot of gold to enhance to these levels. So for me, I'd say about 90% of the time, I'm already making my decision of whether or not I'm keeping the piece at plus 9. So it's very few times do I take a piece to 9, and then I'm like, actually, I think I'll try it at 12. And I try it at 12, and then I have to trash it or make a decision. I'm usually pretty dead set on 15ing a piece once it's at plus 9, because I try to maximize the amount of pieces that you get that are good to plus 9, so that if they roll poorly at 12 and 15, it's not that bad. So this is an example of a piece that is not a very good piece to have at plus 12. I trashed this as I was going through my account the other day. Another big important part is you never want to craft gear for specific units. So when you're crafting, it's good to have in mind like 4 or 5 or 6 unit archetypes be a little niche that you can, have it in your mind. Like, okay, maybe I get like an attack or ER piece for a Miki or something, right? But you never want to be focusing crafting for a specific unit. You always want to craft for the goal of getting good gear. And so what that looks like here is that maybe this is a piece that you could end up with. This is a high equipment score piece I rolled the other day that is kind of for a faster bruiser. And so that's not many units that I have right now. This is like a nice little Mort piece or something. But I already have a piece for Mort. And so this is a great piece for a unit like that archetype. but it doesn't necessarily have a home right now, but it's a great piece that I'm happy I have on my account because I was rolling for good pieces. I wasn't fishing for a specific unit to build. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about unit archetypes, different main stats they want, as well as substats and sets that they want. So there's 4 main archetypes in Epic 7. First off, you have DPS, like Arbiter Vildred here. So DPS want attack, crit chance, crit damage, and speed, usually. You have Bruisers, which are, instead of DPS, which scale off of attack, Bruisers usually scale off of either HP or defense, but they still want crit chance and crit damage substats as well. Tanks and Soul Weavers, like Ruel, they usually want HP, defense, speed, effect resistance. So they want bulk, and then they usually want ER to resist debuffs coming from debuffers, like DDR here, who usually just want speed and effectiveness, but a lot of times they want bulk as their secondary substat. So that's why I have those in parentheses here. Now, most units are going to fall into one of these 4 categories. It's important to note that there are exceptions to every rule. For example, I talked about Amiki earlier. She's kind of a bruisery unit that just wants attack and ER. So there are weird builds that may not fit into a specific archetype. But if you're looking for gear, the best way to build it is for archetypes. And if you craft gear for archetypes, you will find that these pieces will find places on units that fit one of these 4 archetypes. Now, for unit archetypes, here are a general overview of the sets that they want. So there are a lot of sets in the game, and it's good to learn a lot of them. There are a few that aren't really used. Revenge set and Unity set are considered some of the weakest sets, but you know, you can use any set technically. But the recommended sets I have are all listed here. For DPS, you know, it's going to be your attack scaling, damage increasing sets. For Bruisers, it's going to be things that increase their HP, increase their defense, but also allow them to deal more damage, like crit and penetration. For Tanks and Soul Weavers, it's going to be a lot more defensive focused sets. So, you know, speed, counter, sets that make them bulky, ER, immunity as well. And then debuffers, the main 2 sets you're going to be prioritizing are just speed and hit set. Pretty much every debuffer is ideally built on a speed hit set combo, so that's a 4-2 set. Now I'm going to break down necks, rings, and boots. So necks, rings, and boots can all have different main stats. I talked about right side gear can have different main stats. For necks, these are the only right side pieces that can have crit chance or crit damage. And so here is a chart that kind of overlays what kind of unit archetypes, what kind of main stats. So I will say flat main stats should pretty much always be avoided. There are some extremely niche cases where flat attack and flat HP are better at some weird units, but yeah, all in all, normally you want percent attack main stats or percent HP or percent defense. So here, this key is basically saying any blue square is an archetype that matches up to something that they want often. So most DPS want crit damage main stat next. Most bruisers want crit damage main stat next. Most tanks, soul weavers, and debuffers usually want HP percent main stat next. The yellow squares are more niche cases, so more sometimes. So technically it's more equipment score, which we'll talk about later for CC main stat, but it's usually overkill. Usually you have too much crit chance on these DPS or bruisers for it to be worth it. And then some DPS may want attack stat as their main. And then some of these debuffers, these bulkier units, may want defense percent on their neck too. Now for rings, rings are the only piece that can have effectiveness or effect resistance on them. And so debuffers really want that effectiveness usually to hit those high, 150, 200 effectiveness thresholds. And then tanks and soul weavers a lot of times want an ER ring. Now DPS pretty much only want attack percent rings, and then bruisers usually want the HP or defense percent ring depending on what they scale their damage on. For boots, you'll notice that boots are the only right side piece that can have speed, and what that means, they get 45 speed for boots. That is a ton of equipment score, and so that's really important, and it basically means that almost every case of every unit you're going to build is going to have a speed main boot. I'd say that I have about 5 or 6 units built total on my entire account that don't have a speed main boot. So it's extremely, extremely rare. So basically, speed boots are your friend, speed main stat, right? But in some niche cases for really slow builds, for DPS, they may want attack, and then for bruisers and tanks, they may want bulkier subs or bulkier mains. Now that we've covered unit archetypes, we'll talk about equipment score. So equipment score is the main way to evaluate a gear's goodness level. So every at +3, 6, 9, 12, and 15, those are your thresholds that you gain substats for gear. So you will always enhance to one of those thresholds, right? And now at each threshold, you get a fixed level of equipment score, but the level of equipment score we care about is what you get from your substats, because main stats are going to be the same for every piece, right? And so this is a general value of equipment, and we'll talk about what this means. So the way that substats add on to these main stat values As you can see, it's a little awkward in scaling for some of them, but for HP, defense, attack, effectiveness, and ER percentages, you're going to get 1 point per percentage on that substat. For crit damage, you're going to get about 1.25 points. It caps out at 7. For crit chance, you're going to get, it's like a 1.75 or so per percent. And then for speed, it's going to be a 2 to 1. So for 2 speed, it'll give you 4 equipment score, and 4 speed 8. And then I talk about flat HP, defense, and attack. So usually these are bad. These are basically, in my mind, I kind of mentally consider them as minimum percentage rolls. So if I have an attack flat roll, I count that as a 4% attack. So obviously, on certain pieces, having that attack that is a flat may not be that bad. But it needs to be synergistic with other things, or you can count it as basically just a dead roll. It's not actually contributing much, and that's why its equipment score is also limited. So when you use equipment score, the best thing I use is, if I'm not speed chasing, I usually score check my gear. And so this means at levels of enhancement, I want to see what equipment score I have. And these are kind of a good baseline for like a mid to late game player. But you can scale these numbers by 2 or 3 points in either direction if you're a newer player, or if you're trying to go for really high equipment score builds as a late game player. So as an early game player or mid game player, I would say that you want about 36 equipment score at +3, 47 at +6, 58 at +9, and 69 at +12. Again, we're trying to make our decisions here at +9, so having those high 50s pieces at +9 are usually going to be the ones we take to 15, right? But you can use these and say, I have a +6 piece, it's 44 equipment score. Is that good? If the pieces aren't, if the subsets aren't particularly synergistic, they don't work as super well together, that's probably a trash piece, right? Now, so just for a general overview, post reforge, this is all after reforging gear, you have left side pieces, and then for early to mid game players, I'd say you want to average about an 85 to 90 equipment score on your left side pieces. And then right side pieces we talked about, they're so much harder to get because your main stat is random. So these, it's okay to be like around an 80 to an 85 equipment score average, because these pieces are so hard to come by that you just have to suck it up and they're going to be worse. But for late game players, I'd say left side, you want to start averaging, 94 to 98, really want to push those equipment scores, and so you don't get gear gapped. And then for right side, you want to start shooting for around that 90 range if you can. So next up, we'll talk about what you should roll. So this is taking all of your unenhanced pieces. So first off, never enhance blue gear. It's terrible. It sucks. Just turn it into cubes. And then that also goes to say, if you have gear that's at +0, it's better to turn it into cubes. And if you have gear that's enhanced, it's better to turn it into dust. I find that I get more value out of that. So your main source of cubes that you will be using for equipment modification, as well as turning into the charms at the Alchemist Steeple every week, will be from these blue gears that you turn into cubes. Now, what should you roll? So the first thing to look for is you want to look for synergistic substats that work for a unit archetype. So we talked about what subs those units want for different archetypes, like DPS, 1 attack, crit chance, crit damage, speed. You want to find pieces that have those substats together and that also are in one of those sets that that archetype wants. So like a crit set piece for a DPS, or like an ER set piece for a Soul Weaver. And then you want to search for high base rolls as well. So using that chart earlier where I talk about what the maximum base rolls could be, if you have a piece that has some 8% rolls on like attack or on like HP and defense per se, those are some high base rolls. That's a really good place to start from. The better you start from, the better you'll end at, right? So it's good to find pieces that are +0 and it's good to enhance. Now, gear always needs about 3 usable substats in my opinion. And this is not counting, which we'll talk about later, speed chasing, which kind of breaks all of these rules. But gear needs 3 usable substats. And so that means that red gear has a free dead substat. It can have a sub that has nothing to do with the synergistic subs that we talked about here. But you hope that it dodges that or only rolls into it once, right? But purple gear, pretty much all of the subs should be something that's at least usable for the archetype of unit you're crafting for. If you want to use equipment score as a baseline for what's good or what's bad, I'm shooting for around 25 for early players or 27 for late game players. Equipment score at +0 is a good place to start with. You'll notice that a lot of your pieces are below this, and that means that it's time to cube them. But you don't want to enhance bad pieces and then fill your account with all this +15 cope gear, right? Next thing, flat stats are terrible. I count them as a minimum percent roll, and I think that's the easiest way for me to interpret them and then make a good decision based off of that quickly, because I know percent's really quick, but the defense being 30 to 60, your attack being whatever, it's a lot harder for me to process mentally. And then we'll talk about speed chasing, which is an exception to all of these rules. Now note, mod gems are important. So when you get to plus 15, you can mod out a specific substat to a different substat. And the issue with this is it's diminishing returns based on how many rolls there were. And so these are only good to use when the sub rolled 0 to 1 time. So either it's the base substat or it rolled once. Those are the best times you're going to get the most value out of mod gems. Sometimes you'll even get a roll that's higher than your original roll if you're doing it on a +0 or a piece that did not roll into that substat at all. But it can save what you would call bad gear. Before mod gems were a thing, it was a lot harder to get specific gear that was good. Okay, now we're going to talk about some exceptions. So the biggest ones are going to be speed set main boots. And so this is speed set and it's a speed main stat. If it's speed set, speed main stat, and you have crit chance, you have effectiveness, or you have ER, you're gonna roll it. You're gonna fish for multiple rolls, at least up to +9 into that substat. For example, this boot here, it has crit chance, it even has attack, so it's actually got 2 usable subs. But you see that this does not pass our benchmark for being a good piece to roll in general, but because it has the potential to roll crit chance a bunch, which is really hard to get on these super fast openers like Ran or like Briar Witch, you really want to fish for that crit chance roll in this scenario. Same if it has an F or an ER. There's a lot of fast ER openers like Moon Bunny, like Frida. A lot of fast F openers, like a ton of them, right? Knockwool, Sea Phantom, all of these guys. So speed set, speed main boots, you'll basically be enhancing these if these have any of these substats. Another niche one that I think is actually really valuable, and I got this from Daddy7, which you should check out his stuff on YouTube as well. And this is looking for 8% attack rolls on epic gear. And so even if it's a broken set, I find that if you're looking for like really bulky units, it's nice to look for pieces that have these 8% substats on them. And so like this is an effectiveness piece, but if we're like pentaing into HP percent on this piece, then this piece is insane on so many, like an A Tywin or something. It's just really, really valuable. So if you have an epic piece that has that potential to give you those huge HP rolls, those are really nice for those bulky units. And then we'll talk about speed chasing, which we'll see on the next slide. So here, these are 2 examples of some speed chasing gear. So if you want to be fast, you need to speed chase. It's essential. Even if you don't want to play fast, you want to play like standard or even tank down really, it's still important to speed chase to a certain extent. So what this looks like is if you have a 3 to 4, if you're late game, you're really going to be pushing on those 4 pieces. I usually don't speed chase unless if it's like a broken set like this counterattack piece, unless it's a 4. And then on speed set pieces, you can go as low as 2 speed. I would not bother rolling those random 1 speed pieces. And then if you catch a stray 5, go for it. Those are both extremely rare edge cases. But yeah, for speed set, you can roll if it's even down to a 2 speed. What you're going to do is you're going to keep enhancing these up to +9. And then purple pieces have to hit speed on every roll up to +9. Otherwise, just trash it. No hesitation. And then red can miss speed once up to +9, but it's going to depend on if it has other substats that are synergistic. But if it has nothing synergistic and it needs to at least roll speed twice up to +9, and then that's kind of a tough decision. But if you have any questions about gear that you're enhancing, make sure to send it in our Discord, and you can join the Discord down below. So next we'll talk about the rolling process, and I have a little example piece for you guys. So this is the piece that we have. So this is a crit set crit set helmet. So crit set we talk about is important for DPS and bruisers. Okay, let's check the substats. It looks like this one has attack percent, crit chance, and speed. Those are all DPS substats. That's great. Not only that, but these are actually pretty good rolls. Crit chance, you can see we have a max roll. Attack, we have a max roll. And speed, we have a middle roll on that 3. So this is a really, really nice piece at its start, even though it's heroic, right? It may not be great for an account like mine where I'm pushing for really nice endgame gear, but if you're an early to mid-game player, this is an insane piece, right? So working through the what should I roll, which is what I just did there, you got to be like, okay, does it have the subs? Does it match an archetype, etc., etc.? Now, 2 other things is if it's low equipment score, does it have speed? So even if this was really bad, but it had the speed, I could still manage to roll it and see if and fish for that speed substat up to +9, right? And now, obviously, if it's high equipment score, like this one is, we want to look for the synergy. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to work on enhancing this piece up by +3 at a time, all the way to +9, where we'll make another decision. So you always want to enhance +3 at a time, and then we're going to check rolls at every enhancement. Now, it's worth noting, especially if you want to have good gear on your account, right? You don't have these coat pieces. Purple, we don't get any bad rolls for purple. There's just an abundance of purple gear. We don't want to just roll really bad stuff. So purple needs to roll great all the way up to +9 for us to be confident to take it to 15. Red gets one bad roll. So it can have either, what a bad roll is it's either a low roll into the right substat or any roll into the wrong substat. So what that means is this purple piece here, right, it only has right substats because they're all DPS subs. However, if we got a low roll, say a 2 roll on crit chance, or I think a 3 roll would be the actual crit chance, that would not actually be the best roll for this piece. And that is what I would consider a bad roll. Now, obviously, this piece started out really well, so if you're a new account, this might be worth continuing at that point. But for someone like me, it's trash if it goes like low crit chance. Now, what it can do, and what this piece actually did, is it rolled high into attack. And so if it rolls high into any of these, that's a good roll, so we can continue. So now what you're going to do is you're going to keep doing this, and you're going to check at every +3 increment and see, did it roll good? Did it roll bad? If it's purple and it rolls bad, get rid of it. If it's red and rolls bad, it gets one more chance. So now that we've taken the piece to +9, we're going to basically work through, is this good one more time? And this is where I make most of my final decisions. So about 90% of the time, I'm deciding if I'm taking a piece to +15 here at +9, because it's so expensive to take it to 12 or 15. And so I actually have a decent amount of pieces that are sitting at 9 that need that decision made or are looking for a unit or something. So 9 is kind of my barrier where I like to be like, okay, is this a piece I really need on my account? You need to be confident that this piece is good at +9 before you take it to 12 or 15. And if you have doubts, just trash it. You're probably not going to miss out. It's more likely that you roll a piece and it craps out and it's not great at 12 and 15 than it is for it to just give you these god perfect like double 4-speed roll or something, right? And so if you have any doubts, it's usually better to just trash. But always you can ask in the Discord as well. Make sure to join that in the description. So this piece we can see here had a high roll into attack, 2 high rolls into crit damage, or 2, it looks like a medium and a high roll, and then no more rolls into speed. And so this is a good piece at this point. I would say this is worth enhancing. Now, for an account like mine, it might be a little low. I'm looking for a lot of speed on these pieces. But for a mid-game player, this is a great piece, and you're going to take it to 15. Now, you can enhance to 12 first. Obviously, here, we're looking for that nice, if it's a purple piece, we're looking for that next roll to be really nice. But it could also just go terribly. So if this was a borderline piece for you and it rolls flat defense at +12, again, you're not fully committed, right? You can still trash it now and save those charms to get to +15. +15 is so expensive. But in general, we have already committed at +9, and so we would normally take it to 15. But yeah, worst thing you can do is fill your account with these coat pieces. So if you have any doubts at +9 or it bombs like this one, if it was already skeptical and it rolls flat defense on this 4th, then I would just trash it. This one rolled HP percent, which was also basically a trash equivalent because it's not a DPS substat. But if it rolled per se crit chance, a 5 roll in crit chance, that would be really, really good. So this is kind of what you're looking for at 12, but for red pieces, it's just going to roll one more time into the substats you already know, so that's a little more predictable. Now you have a max piece, and so you can see this piece rolled attack again at 15, but even if it rolled health again, we could mod that out, and that is why we talked about mod gems can go for 0 to 1 rolls, and so if we have a piece we're confident with at +9, a purple piece even, it can roll 2 really bad subs at 12 and 15, and it's still salvageable because we can mod out that last sub. Now, the real question is, do you reforge it? Do you mod it, right? And so my rule for this, you may already know this if you know me, I talk about this all the time, I preach this. Reforging and modding are for winners only. It's the best of the best, the cream of the crop. And you are never, ever, ever, no exceptions, going to reforge or mod a piece unless it is on a unit. So what that means, I don't care how good it is. I don't care if it's this beast 105 ES piece that's so good. If you don't have a unit for it, right? Don't waste the resources reforging or modding it when you can use those same resources on another unit that you're actually going to use. So keep the piece at 15. Yeah, I know you're itching to reforge it and just show it off to your friends. Send a screenshot like this if you want to show it off to your friends, right? And they can see what ES it is, right? But do not reforge it until it has a home. And that's going to be it. So it's about pretty straightforward. I hope I covered everything you needed to know. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe. I'm a small channel. We did hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for that. You guys have been super supportive. And I stream it every Monday through Friday. on Twitch. So that's Eastern time morning. So you guys should check out those streams as well, also in the description. And then if you need any help with gear whatsoever, or you need help finding a guild or whatever you need, we've got you. Just join the Discord, scan this QR code. It's also in the description down below. Join the Discord and we will help you guys out. And we'll get you set up with gear, with units, whatever you need. We got your back. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have other questions too, you can also ask in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next one. Okay. Chief signing out.